My name is Dawn Kramer, and I teach trumpet at Colorado State University. The purpose of this video is to help you prepare the excerpts for the 2016 Colorado All-State Band Audition. Both excerpts for this audition come from the Snedecor Lyrical Etudes for Trumpet. In this video, we will be analyzing Etude number 14, measures 1 through 24. Please note the printed measure numbers at the beginning of each line start being off by 1 in measure 16. So I've renumbered my etude correctly. Please refer to the corrected measure numbers when referencing my comments. The first thing I notice about this etude is the tempo marking of quarter note equals 88, but it also says adagio. I think 88 seems a little quick for adagio, but we should heed the tempo marking as specified while giving it a slow, relaxed feel. In other words, don't push any of the lines or it'll feel rushed. Take the entire beat for the 8th and 16th notes and spread them out evenly over the bar. Comparing this to the other excerpt for the All-State audition, this one definitely has more of a lyrical feel. So please emphasize beautiful tone, smooth legato tonguing, and gorgeous phrasing. Let's address the first of these, beautiful tone. We can't achieve that if we aren't hearing the correct pitch and blowing down the center of our horn. So I like to take out my mouthpiece and buzz the melody to make sure I'm hearing everything correctly. Buzzing not only makes you really concentrate on the pitches, but it can really help focus your sound too, as it takes any air out of the tone. As a side note, buzzing is also a really helpful tool when you're working on soft dynamics. Okay, the second thing I mentioned when working on a lyrical excerpt is smooth legato tonguing. We have a lot of slurs in this etude, so that definitely helps it sound legato, but let's be sure to keep all the notes full value. Sometimes when there's a slur of just 2 notes, we don't blow all the way through the second note. For example, take a look at measure 19 and listen to the difference of keeping the second note full value versus clipping it. A way to practice legato tonguing is to play through the entire thing slurred. This lets you focus on constant airstream and buzz. Then when you introduce a nice do syllable for your tonguing, it's not stopping the air and buzz, but rather just interrupting it for a split second. Another way to work on this is to whisper through your horn, moving fingers and tonguing where appropriate. You can really hear it where you're stopping the air when you tongue. Here's an example of whispering measures 17 and 18. The third thing I mentioned was phrasing. A phrase is like a sentence. We may have commas and other punctuation in the middle of it, but ultimately we only want to take a breath at the end. When speaking, we don't breathe before the last word of a sentence. Likewise, we shouldn't breathe before the last note of a phrase. In this etude, it's pretty obvious where the phrases are and consequently where the good places are to breathe. It's every 4 measures and consistently starts with a quarter note pickup. At this tempo, you really shouldn't need to breathe any more often than that, which will keep you from breaking up the phrase too much. That being said, I think the bigger phrase is actually 8 measures long. Notice in measure 4, there's a crescendo leading through the breath mark and into measure 5. So keep the energy and dynamic going through that breath. Then it looks like at the very end of every 8th measure, we can actually relax the dynamic a little bit. A final thing that will help the lyrical aspect of this etude is to use some vibrato. Nothing extreme, but just a little movement to give the longer notes some warmth. There's only one ornamentation in this excerpt, and it's the 2 grace notes in measure 9. Play them gracefully, and don't let them mess up the tempo or the pulse. I like to practice grace notes by leaving them out at first, so I know what the important melody really is. In this case, it's the same as measure 1. I also practice them with a metronome, so I make sure I'm landing on the downbeat on time and not interrupting the pulse. There's a piumoso at B. That means a little more motion. So let's not get too carried away with it since we still want to maintain that adagio feel. But let's do have a little forward motion in our intention. We also go into the key of F major here. We've been in C minor up until this point. The transition from minor to major also gives the impression of moving forward. The audition requirements mention that in measure 20, the high C is preferred over the G. A couple of things will help with that. We get to crescendo into it, so use your air and dynamic to help, and maybe write in big breath at the pickups to B, so that when you get to the high C, you have enough air. Another thing that helps is we get to tongue the high C, which gives the note a little extra push. And finally, we are in that slightly quicker tempo, so our air should last longer, and the intention of forward motion will really help propel us to the high C. Most importantly, play it with the same warm, beautiful tone as the rest of the etude. Hear a gorgeous, warm, high C in your head and just make it happen. Try not to overthink it. Focus on maintaining the dynamic of forte until the last couple of measures, so there's a real peak to the excerpt. Keep blowing even as you're coming down the scale from the high B flat in measure 22. Be aware of the retard at the end. It's marked at the beginning of measure 24. But without overdoing it, I may give a little hint of a rit in the 16th notes leading into the final measure. Especially since we're ending our excerpt there, I want to give it a little finality. Here's the excerpt in its entirety. Thanks for watching, and I hope this video has been helpful. Good luck on your audition, and I hope to see you soon.